Yeah, it comes time to
All right.
Not very social.
Yeah. That's a little scary. They're thinking that it would be just as effective.
Can you see that?
I was debating whether or not to call them inspired number one.
Well, since there is not one, you could do that. I mean, there's not one.
Oh, we're gonna do one more, probably close to the summertime, so we only try to like do it and stuff. We're gonna do it with just getting a summer. Which is like all. We're gonna do all the time.
It's not this weekend, bro. No, it's on April 5th. That's fine. If it's this weekend, then the answer is no. Yeah. Oh, are you?
Yeah, and it's one of your tickets. And it was Brian, so I asked her, what was Brandon on? Yeah.
I'm sure you're stage handing. Nice.
Yep.
I almost like, I was thinking when they were asking I don't know if I should.
Okay, everybody, I'm going to start. And there's a few folks on Zoom. Can you hear me, everybody? On Zoom?
Yeah.
Is it muffled? A little bit? I'm going to pull you up a little closer. There you go. So y'all just have to do the best we can here. All right. I'd like you to take out the Shoshone Love Song, and let's jump right into that. If you had a chance to watch the little video I sent out yesterday, you may not have gotten to it yet. But what that is a follow-up to what I wanted to do on Tuesday's class, which is just discuss some basic things about that choral music analysis form and try to define a little bit better between tessitura and range. And we'll get to it as we'll review most of what I said as we go through the score. So, if I sound like I'm yelling, it's because I'm trying to project my voice to the folks out there. So, you have three authors in your textbook that talk in various ways about score preparation and or basically rehearsal techniques. And I am a big advocate that score preparation is the gateway to good choral rehearsal techniques. And so the idea is that we as the conductors make ourselves absolutely as fluent as possible with score. And so that while we may not be memorized in every aspect of the score, we know through going, making markings, doing an evaluation, some of the things that you did in the choral music analysis, the form, we know that going in. We're not learning it with our students. we are anticipating sort of problems and challenges and wanting to, whether it's literacy or whatever. Brian, would you mind shutting that door? There's some very industrious flute players today. So if we look at the score, and this is along the lines of James Jordan. He's the fellow that wrote the last chapter on choral rehearsal techniques. And one of the things that, if you haven't read it yet, at least the first few pages, I'd be interested to know what you think about his ideas of colors and going into the score and marking it up. And from my perspective, the idea is that I think you want clarity in your score. And my opinion is if you've got 16 colors that you're marking in your score, that might be more confusing than if you just simply have 2 or 3. So that's an interesting element that I'd like to visit here in a minute. But first thing I would suggest that we do is we've already evaluated what key it's in this particular piece. You can see we have F minor, and like I mentioned in the last video, the chords are there, so any analysis that you do is really truncated. You can deal with that as it is. So let's take together, just conduct with me, we're going to conduct in 3, and we're going to imagine that we're sitting at a table or we're standing, and we're going to sing the melody line together, and we're going to sing it on 2. Here we go, and 2. So, what James Jordan and some of the other folks, especially Jordan, is promoting is that we want to put ourselves through the same thing that our singers are going to do. And what that does is that it anticipates lots of stuff. For instance, where does my 3rd beat occur on measure 8? Well, it occurs right on the cutoff. It occurs right on the breath. And so there are just little things that I am immediately aware of from a conducting standpoint and what my singers are going to be dealing with. So that's what I'd like you to, those little things I'd like you to be aware of now. Where are the long notes? How does it feel to use your breath? Ding, ding. This is what our people do. This is what our singers have to do. So it might even be that we investigate during this process some of the techniques that we might use in the rehearsal. So maybe I'll have them sing on ooh. Maybe I'll have them use a duh, a D to articulate because there are rhythms. Maybe I will have them pulse by doing something like this. But whatever the case, we're finding all of that out now. So let's pay attention to now on our, we're going to do it again. Feel how the long notes sing. What does that require of our singers? And then there aren't that many rhythmic figures in this, right? But there are a few, and they're going to be little red flags for your singers. I think it was Robert Shaw, the great conductor, said, the seminal rhythm that human beings make mistakes on is the dotted quarter eighth, because they don't subdivide. So while we're conducting, we are essentially subdividing. That's the other thing we're feeling and anticipating. Oh, that's interesting. Same thing occurs on the 8th rest in measure 8. So let's do that again. So we're going to take that same tempo and 1, 2, conduct. Good. So now let's just let's do the same thing with the bass line. What is called the bass line in this piece? Ready? And so a quick look tells me, oh, that's the one place where there's any harmony whatsoever. Is that we wouldn't have to go through that process for every part. I just took us to the men's parts. So it's absolute unison until measure 10, where the part changes, and then it's just two part. Tenors and basses on one, and then the melody is in the winds part. As I alluded to in the other video, now in the second A section, we have parts. Everybody has their own part, even if it's just kind of some minor, pun intended, even if it's a little variation. So let's sing the alto line, okay? You don't have to conduct, but let's change the syllable to D. Sorry, here we go. 1 and 2, go. Okay, so what I'm finding out is that's actually quite a beautiful part. And I'm going to make sure that my altos believe that I think it is a beautiful part. And they will enjoy the process as they have something that's a little bit different. So often, da, 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 da. You with me here, Sean?
Yeah, I'm looking at the score on the
Oh,
phone.
cool.
Sorry, I forgot it.
I thought you were talking to your friend or something.
No, sorry.
I'm just kidding. But alto parts are usually pretty boring, particularly a young kid's music part where they sustain the common tone over and over and over again, and they might go da 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 da. Wow, there's one note that changes in 4 measures. And so anytime there is an alto part that has a beauty in and of itself, I think that's fairly remarkable. And it'll also make the altos feel like they're more than just kind of the workman of the choir. Like I'm sure that there are instrumental versions of those parts as well. But anyway, that's kind of the choral comedy, I guess, is the alto being kind of stagnant sort of part. So now let's look at the bass part at the second A section on measure 13. Here we go, 1 and 2 and go. So on. So that's a typical kind of a following the chord progression bass line. And let's try the tenor line now. It starts on the tonic. Ready and go. So by doing this, we're encountering the same mistakes that our students are going to make. And when you have, unlike in a college or professional group, and it'd be the same way with an instrumental ensemble if you were conducting the symphony, we don't, the kind of score preparation that you're going to have in the middle school and high school level is not, you're not doing symphonies, you're not doing the Brahms Requiem. And so the score preparation, we can really take the time to go through these. Why? Because our voices are the instrument. And we want to be able to impact every rehearsal with some sort of goal that will advance our students, right? So Tuesday, they accomplish this. Thursday, we hope that we're on a different plane with their ability level. And so by becoming as fluent as possible with the whole score. So that process is promoted by James Jordan. Go through the score, literally conduct and sing, you can choose a neutral syllable, and feel what the singing aspects are. Where are the breaths going to be important? How do you want your singers to take the breaths? Are they rhythmic? Meaning, are they in the interior of the phrase? And if they take an extra breath, are they going to have to add time? We don't want that to happen. We don't want to teach, oh, take a breath and stop the music. So what's the difference between a rhythmic breath and at the end of the phrase where there's a lot more time? And it sounds like, oh, we've all been doing this for most of our lives, but the students, they don't know the difference between a rhythmic breath and whatever. So all of those things are made immediately evident to you in all four parts if you take the time to do that. So then the text, and several of the authors discuss the issues of the text, because this is an aspect that you who play mostly instrumental music, you don't deal with. And so when we look at something, we tend to, if you're not a singer, probably, we look at it as more as a speaker, right? You look at text and you say it. Fair is the white star of twilight, and the sky clear at day's end. That's beautiful text, all that stuff. But what happens when we sustain every element of the diction? And what does that do to the text? So a beginning way of doing that any one of us can do without trying to sing all the parts is chanting. So we just sustain the sound. So if we say, fair is the white star, that sort of thing, just sustain the word fair. Ready? Say it. Fair. Yeah, you can already feel in your own mouth, you can hear across the class, we've got different places where people are starting to go to the R, right? Fair. 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 It sounds like I'm having a problem. I know, but literally saying these words is the way that we get ourselves to realize, okay, that's the tool that we sing this stuff on, or the mechanism that we sing these melodic lines on. And so while this isn't a diction class, we have to think about the parts of the sounds. And how do we address that with our students? So if you say fe, the actual vowel isn't an A, it's an S sound, right? If we pronounce it the way we pronounce it here in America. Fair, and then there's a little reflex where the R is made that the tongue moves. And so just say it, fair.
Fair.
Now say fair.
Fair.
Now sing fair.
Fair.
Yeah, exactly. Now say fair.
Fair.
Now I don't want my singers to do that, and I'd lose half the choir anyway. But the point is that those are the elements that will either cause a situation for our choir to be able to blend with each other or not. So if, let's have some of you, why don't you three right here sing for, you sing fear, we'll sing far, fair, fear. Here we go. How long does pitch go? Yeah. So now you have what is, we tried to manufacture it, but you could just try that out with any choir that you ever direct and say, okay, everybody sing fair on this note, and you'll get that sort of phenomenon. So we're going to need to direct, say fair. Everybody goes, fair. Now sing fa, go. Yeah, we immediately have a different sound in the room, right? You can hear that. So the consideration of the text, and then we try singing that text. Let's conduct ourselves, just the soprano line, and 1 and 2. Bright is the white star of twilight, on the blue sky clear as you had a sky, I had a moon. Blue stars, yellow clovers. Yeah. So you can feel it now in your own mouth. So another way for us just to say, let's make the vowels as long as possible, okay? So we're going to sustain every one of these. Fa, is the, would you put the Z with the? Say, is the white star.
White star.
And there's lots of ways that you as a teacher could do this. White star, or you could say white star. But see, we have to allow for that. We have to figure out, they're going to want to know where they put that T. They're going to want to know where they put that Z from the word is. Is the. We have to have an answer for that. Star of. Probably going to make some new syllables, right? Put the R of star with the O, V of. Star of twilight. So let's just do that. In your own singing, we're going to sing, Fair is the white star of twilight. So make those ending syllables go with the next syllable. Okay, ready? And. Let's actually say off two. And two. Fair is the white star of twilight. Voila. Voila. I just did this with my own car yesterday, didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I heard no D on the end of the word. And so you will spend so much time making your choir understood. So what we did, we went through just the first A section, we sang all the parts, then we thought about, okay, text. How does that text fit onto those notes rhythmically? And we haven't even talked about dynamics. We haven't even considered being musical. We've been robotic. But we haven't really discussed, at least outwardly, we've been doing it. But if I go, I can place every single note there absolutely in time. If I ask the choir to sing on a subdivided da-ba-da. So if they so that's another technique that you think, well, what am I going to do with these people for 50 minutes on a simple piece of music? We've been talking here for 15 minutes about 3 or 4 different things, and all of that could not be accomplished in one rehearsal, because you are probably going to be doing at least 3 pieces in your rehearsal with those students. And so this kind of preparation gives us the tools. So this is like a stick your foot into the water discussion today about kind of what I want you to look for in those 3 chapters. Like, okay, they're saying to do this and this and this. You're going to have one author, like the first one, say things like, and then one must associate the free will of the human spirit with several principles of, I mean, that's the way it starts to read if you read it. And a long time ago there was a commercial for NPR that Robin Williams did, and there was this drip in the background. And he pretended that he was an erudite, person. I believe that several of the large Cro-Magnon skulls that are, and the point was, the narrator over it was saying, if you want a dry experience, then go to an archaeological lecture. If you want to be taken for a journey, that's what it was about. So every time I read a passage or I hear something like that that's so erudite, I think of that commercial and I'm like, yeah, that's really going to turn those kids onto music, right? If they're thinking about the structures of the spheres or whatever. So hopefully that's going to start the conversation on the rehearsal techniques, and then we'll get into it more next week. I'm going to really try not to make your head spin, but we're going to have a guest choral audition today. There is a fellow who's been wanting to get into the choir for a long time. His name is Marcus Hall. So I've asked Marcus to serve as my guinea pig for you today. So I'm completely changing gears now. Choral rehearsal techniques over for today. We haven't talked about the choral audition for a long time, and we sort of got sidetracked because of how long we spent on a couple of other things on the warm-up. But I want to kind of simultaneously take you through several topics at the same time. And so let's consider, remember our discussions way back, and I think I gave you some materials related to the voice, and we used those materials to talk about concepts that would be done in the warm-up, and how you are going to be essentially the voice teacher for most of your students in most of the towns, unless you live in a metropolitan area and your kids can afford to take lessons. Otherwise, you're going to be the vocal authority. So those things that we discuss about warm-ups and the vocal mechanism, we're going to use as assessment tools to try to figure out, okay, I've got 100 kids that are going to come in and they want to be in the bars. I've got 3 or 4 choirs, and what are the ways that I can hear all of them, assess quickly, and still not take until, from late August to early March to audition 100 kids. Like, let's spend a period every day with one kid. So Marcus is being, incredibly brave to do this. And this is more like a lab than a real situation, because obviously Marcus is a college student. But I'm going to kind of treat the audition as if he's a high school person he's just auditioning to be in a choir at the high school level. He's not in high school and all that. He's not going to pretend he is, but that's what the little scenario. And so I've asked him to fill out the choral audition form, and before he comes up here, I made sure that my hands were completely sanitary before and after giving you these. Johnson & Johnson guarantee certification. If you get sick, it's not my fault. And these are the materials that I'm using today. You can look at them if you want. I'm not going to give these to you yet, but I'll give them to you afterward. So, everything that you have, I'm starting with, just to set this up. I've given Roman numerals to 2 of the sheets. One of them is, the number one is the sight reading rhythmic. And then the second sheet, and I have it front and back on my copies, as does Marcus, is for the melodic exercises. And one side is treble and one side is bass. So in your case, I think I Xeroxed them separately. So they're you got 2 sheets, right? No? Did I? Oh, I went back to back. Isn't that wonderful? And then the last thing you should have is the America the Beautiful, which is just for your reference, just so you can see the sequencing. And so the student is given, in this case, the student is given the first sheet that you have. And whether one uses another holding room or you pass them out in class at the end of a class period and you ask somebody to collect them or whatever. However this is done before the student steps into the room that you're using to do the audition. If you're using your choir room, if you're using the office, I like to use a smaller space, like my office, for the audition so that the room itself is not overwhelming. And, Marcus gets the joys of being in a big room in front of 15 people, I just thought, wow, you're a brave guy. So why don't you come in? I'm going to go through this and bring your sheet with you. And let's go through the whole process and have you.
You want to actually leave the room?
No, you don't. Oh, come on in. And hi there.
Hello.
And you. Good. So now, can you tell me a little bit about the hat that you're wearing?
Sure. Seattle Mariners
Seattle Mariners.
baseball team in Washington State.
Yeah. Somebody told me that already had an audition here that you have a whole collection of hats on your wall at home.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
It is.
How many of the teams?
Which sport?
Do you have more than one? Do you have more than baseball hats?
Yeah.
How many sports?
4.
4 sports of hats? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I appreciate you being here today. And so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to just ask you to do a little vocalizing, and I'll show you the pattern. And we're going to start in the middle of your range and kind of work down, okay? Or approximately what the middle of your range is. And would you just sing this? Yeah. You can slide a little, okay? Ready? Go. Good. Good for you. Luke, it is your destiny. Your lower voice reminds me a little bit of that guy. So let's go up now, okay? So now we're going to use a similar pattern to go the other direction. So I'd like you to go, ya. Those are the notes. We're going to go a little faster. Ya.
That one's hard.
Good. Boy, you've got a big range, and you're really able to go up pretty high. Excellent. There's a sheet there on your music stand that has a Roman numeral 1 on it, and it's got rhythms. And if you would look at letter A, have you ever clapped or tawed rhythms before? Yeah. Well, why don't you look at that for a little bit, and I'm going to ask you to either clap those rhythms with your hands or taw them with your voice. So 2/4, do you know what that means?
Or, yes.
You do. Well, let's pretend that it means 2 beats measure and the quarter note gets the pulse.
Okay.
So I'm going to tap the quarter note for you. So the quarter note goes about that tempo. Can you clap or taw the rest of those rhythms?
Sure. It doesn't matter which one.
Yeah, letter A.
Well, I mean, clapping or talking.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
All right, that's good. Could you start on the third measure? Just start right on the third measure.
Sure.
Ready and go.
Sorry.
Yeah, be sure that you let the other beat drop on that dot. Good. Yeah, so you do read rhythms, and let's look at this sheet, which is 2 melodic. It has a 2 on it, and it has a bass clef. Be sure that you look at the side that says bass clef. And would you look at exercise number 1? Do you have any idea what key that's in?
C major.
It is, in this case, C major, absolutely. So it begins and ends on the tonic. It begins and ends on C. I don't know if you know solfege, if you'd like to sing that on solfege, or if you just like a syllable like la, do, or da. But if you could use that as your starting pitch and in your own tempo, just try to sing that for me as best you can, both lines, okay?
La, 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 la. And then the starting pitch will be.
Yeah. Go on to the next line. Okay, good, good. So you can keep track of where the C is, and then you can always return to that key if you get off. Good. Okay, the last thing I'd like you to do, Marcus, is sing America the Beautiful, and it is the one that has parts. Looks like this. And do you know the melody for this?
Yes.
Okay, because some people don't, and so let's just use the key that it's in, okay? So we're gonna use B flat major. And I'd like you to start off this pitch, and if you'll sing the first verse at your own speed. Here we go.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grace.
Good. Let's stop there. You're doing fine, but I think I'd like you to try it in the lower key.
Okay.
We can sing it down here. Oh, beautiful. So I'm going to put it in G major. Here we go.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grace.
Yeah, good. Thank you. That's all I need. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So thank you for playing that game with me. So all of those sort of evaluative sorts of things that happened, there were a lot of things. The talking gave me an idea about his speaking voice and what my expectations were going to be. I had an expectation based on that speaking voice that he was going to be a low voice. There was good resonance, and he stayed down here kind of in that area. I would have been surprised, but it often happens, that if I'd have vocalized that same singer, ah, ah, that they would have run out of low pitch earlier than I expected. But because some of our students are going to speak down here, especially high school boys, junior high boys, they're going to try to sing in the or speak in the low part of their range just because it's macho. So it could be that that voice will go. It'll be a faux low voice when you hear them speak. That'll straighten itself out as soon as you hear the singing. But that was confirmed with Marcus because he sang down easily to an F. There's not many tenors that are able to do that. Most tenors are going to have a hard time going to below C3. So C3 for most tenors is a very low pitch. A fifth below that says to me that he would have a lot of trouble in the tenor part. However, vocalized upward, one of the things that's unusual for Marcus, what your real singing background is what? I mean, how much singing have you done in choirs?
In like actual choirs?
Okay, so for that experience, which I already suspected, is he had a really easy transition into head voice and falsetto. Did you notice that? So, that's what you'll encounter in a lot of younger voices that just haven't ever sung or dealt with that transition. But that's kind of what he did. He just slipped into that falsetto without much of a break. I would look at that as great because that means that in a lot of the higher baritone stuff or higher bass stuff, he's not going to be, sitting on a barbed wire fence, and so to speak. But anyway, that's a skill that Marcus maybe didn't know he had, and I would think that's a really good thing because there were no big breaks in the voice. Then we evaluated the various sight reading things. You notice how I helped throughout, whether it was rhythm or whether it was pitch, because the last thing I want to have any singer do is fail and make them aware of it. I mean, I don't want, if this was a real situation, if somebody couldn't even match pitch, for example, can you sing, and if he hadn't been able to match the C, I would have tried something like this. Could you repeat these pitches for me? Oh, can you try this? And I'd say, can you do that? And try to get them to match the inflection of my voice as close to the same timbre and pitch as I was doing. That is a tool that you will find very useful as you go out, is the kind of yawn sigh or slide, because that is the method through which we can get somebody that has problems matching to start to tie together what they're hearing outside their body with what they're producing on the inside. Oh, everybody can do that. I mean, everybody in the world can do that. And there's no fail or success. I would immediately try to dump some of the tools that I was using and try to get to pitch matching. Because I know what I'm going to write on my assessment, right? Has pitch matching problems. I'm not talking about you, by the way. I'm talking about a hypothetical. Has pitch matching problems, or blah blah blah. After a while, was able to reach the pitch. I have a numbering system that I come up with. For instance, on your form. Sorry, folks who are on video, they have a form in front of them that is the same audition form that I use. And underneath the part that the student fills out, there's a part for them, because this is the ISU form where we were pretending it was high school. Let's say all the high school groups were on there. I'd kind of like to know what group or groups they're aspiring to. I'd like to know what their idea is. Some may not check that, and then I'd say, and they'd say, well, I knew I wasn't going to be in the women's choir. Camerata singers is old people, and I'm not interested in the chamber choir. I mean, somebody might say that, so, okay, great, then I'll check that. So range, I leave that open because I like to personally customize that by drawing in a treble or a bass clef. So then I fill in a specific pitch. I color that in. For the bottom note, I color in a note for the top note that they can sing. What notes do I choose? I choose the notes that they can actually phonate on. I wouldn't choose that note. I'd choose that note as his bottom note. And the same thing with the upper note, the note with which either he doesn't go to falsetto, or I pick the, let's say, middle C. I'd put middle C as the first top note, and then I'd put an arrow up that would say head voice or falsetto. And that note that I placed there is the transition note. That's my own notation. It's not, I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but that's what I've developed over time, that I understand what all that means every time I look at it. If I see a note with an arrow going up, I know in a men's voice what that means. That's falsetto or a change of function. So quality, what do I mean by that? For me, that means, do I hear a baritone, tenor, bass baritone, mezzo soprano? Texture, weight. Is it a dramatic voice? Does this 15-year-old boy come in and sing, oh, or do they sing, there's a difference. Whether it's airiness or it's reedy or it's fluty, those are some of the descriptive words that I would put there. Breath connection, how are they connected when they sing? Just as they come in. It's just an assessment like, okay, this singer's really under-supported, or this singer comes in with some really good training, and they really, and maybe they don't have any training at all, but their personality is like this. And they got breath till the cows. You know. So then for me, I just want to say something here like, you know, he has a great collection of baseball, football, and whatever hats. Or just something. It doesn't even necessarily need to be vocal. What will I remember about this student? And that would be one thing, is the hats. You know, you mean which sport? That took me by surprise, by the way. I didn't realize you had so many different sports. And then these little notations, I have a 0 to 4 scale for myself, you know. 0 means they have no skills and they need to be taught something. 1, very basic. 2, moderate. 3, pretty good. You know, they can get through these exercises pretty well. 4, they're just great readers. You know, not 4, they're perfect. I don't assess that. It's just quick. So I took a little more time with him, but I think we did it in 10 minutes. I could have easily truncated that down to 8. And that's what I typically allow in my auditions here at ISU is 8 or 9 minutes. I think I put 10 minutes on there, but I try to get ahead of the game. So that's how little time you have. And that's how much assessment you get on every one of these kids. Yeah.
For the sake of time, do you ever let students choose, do you want to start with rhythm first or melody, or like the sight reading, melodic sight reading first, or do you ever let them pick?
I don't.
Okay.
No, but I would do a few things a little differently if I were dealing with public school kids than I do here. There's so many more assumptions that I can make here at the university. Just because I know, like for you who are majors and stuff, I know a certain level of, you know, just comfort with not just the process. Everybody gets nervous. I get nervous when somebody gives me an assessment. But what I mean is that you're familiar with auditions. All of you are, with some kind of audition. You've done instrumental auditions, you've done vocal auditions. When the students are unfamiliar, like if he had been a 15-year-old, I probably would have said, well, you know, or I could have said, I don't know that I would have, but I could have said, okay, after we sang, I'd like you to, no, I'm thinking now off the top of my head, when I did this in the high school and junior high level, I didn't have a separate rhythmic component. I had a basic sight reading that was melodic, and I assessed their rhythms based on that. In other words, could they sustain a half note in time? Could they sustain? That's what it was. I didn't do it that way. And I'm not saying again that that's right, but that's why I'm fumbling for the answer, because I didn't do it that way. So anyway, I'm out of time, but I thought that at least by showing you, okay, here is one way that somebody who's done this for a while and has a system, this is how one system can be done. Now, all of the antiquated ways that because I have this thing about setting up chairs, I like to do that. I have this thing about writing the note myself. Those are just my own quirks that I will do till the day I retire. But there are lots of ways that you can truncate this with technology. And we'll talk about that more too. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Wait, Dr. Innocent, I have a question. Does order matter? Like, for example, in my high school audition, which is very similar to yours, we would do America the Beautiful first, and then we do rhythm and sight reading. Is there a reason why you do rhythm and sight reading first, and then America the Beautiful?
Yeah, the reason that I do it that way is so that they have probably the easiest and less pressure thing at the end. They're not being assessed by sight reading or by rhythmic reading, so that they're able to just sing. And I've already vocalized them, you know, very little. So they've already been kind of analyzed. They've already sung for me. So by the time they get to America, it's something that's a little more familiar with them. That's my own, because I want them to leave the room with the most successful part of the audition, rather than the, you know, let's say they know they royally bombed on the, you know, because even if I try to make them feel good, most of them are going to know that, wow, I didn't read that at all. And I would prefer them not to have that experience. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. Thank you.